"Just an accident," my husband said after his mom shoved me, losing my baby. Years of abuse later, she giggled at my SIL's pregnancy. I left. Now they beg. It was a complete mishap, an unavoidable situation. There's nothing we can change about that. My husband wouldn't take my side when I begged him after I lost the baby. My mother-in-law, who resided with us, had tripped me and I could not have any more children. I was praying the baby would arrive healthy. 3 years passed and my mother-in-law was thrilled about my sister-in-law expecting a child. My heart was completely crushed. I felt like a servant every single day. Nevertheless, everything changed dramatically afterward and my situation was completely reversed. I'm Kristen. When I was 25, I wed Scott, who was 3 years older than me. We had both gone to the same college and I instantly felt enamored with him. After pursuing him with determination, he finally noticed me, proposed, and we got married. I was absolutely ecstatic, anticipating a life with Scott, who was incredibly handsome and so very kind. But I had no idea that these were the beginnings of serious struggles. The initial problem arose immediately following our wedding. Concerning our new house, it's all right if we live with Mom, right? My father had passed away, so she'd be all alone if we didn't. Scott's sudden suggestion completely surprised me. Prior to getting married, I was living by myself, yet he had always lived with his parents. I had just assumed we'd find a place for us to live in as a couple. What? We are not going to have our own place. In fact, my mother-in-law had told him that sharing a house with her was a condition of our marriage. That was something I had never heard of. I was utterly stunned when my husband abruptly confessed something. It turned out he'd already decided with his mom to live together, and I hadn't been told. That news was difficult to swallow on its own, but there was also another issue. It seemed that I knew my mother-in-law didn't care for me much. At our initial meeting and the wedding, she only addressed me when she had to, and I often received cold stares. I wasn't sure I could handle living with a mother-in-law with that kind of attitude. My husband seemed totally oblivious to my worries. "What's the big deal about living together? Don't stress, you two will get along," he said with a huge grin, and I was speechless. Therefore, influenced by his cheerful outlook, I ended up residing in Scott's family's house. Unfortunately, my fears became a reality. Your cooking isn't great, is it?" she'd say. "You put so much effort into making food that tastes like that, but it took forever since you made me stop and clean while I was cooking." "Are you talking back to me?" she'd snap. "Just because you're young and my son likes you, don't get too big for your britches, you incompetent girl." I began to think my mother-in-law was envious of me, the woman her son had married. She couldn't stand seeing me content, so she made me quit my job, insisting a woman should stay home after marriage. Then she dumped all the housework on me and harassed me when my husband wasn't present. She'd mess up the kitchen right after I finished cleaning, or she'd throw away the meals I cooked. Even when I brought it up with Scott, all he ever said was, "I'll have a word with her." But even though he kept wanting us to live together, he never actually took action. So even though we were just married, I was already feeling overwhelmed. However, during all of this chaos, there was one person who was truly on my side. I just couldn't believe it. "You're leaving everything to Kristen." "Mom, you can come with us too. You need to pitch in with the chores." My sister-in-law, Vanessa, actually gave my mother-in-law a piece of her mind for just sitting there while I was doing all the work. "It's all right. Kristen wants to do it." That just couldn't be the truth. "Scott, you need to properly scold Mom as well." "Why am I getting in trouble too?" Vanessa, who seemed so grown-up for her age, didn't just scold Scott, who was watching TV, but also helped me out around the house. "Let's work on this together," she stated with a bright smile, and I could feel my heart starting to feel better. Vanessa had been friendly toward me since I started dating her brother. But there was a specific reason why she'd become so close to me, which went back to an event a few years before. That day, Vanessa was on her way to her final interview at her dream company during her job search, and the train was delayed. I spotted her looking lost at the station and decided to give her a ride to the interview location. After that, she ended up getting the job and started working there, and she became even fonder of me. "I'll always have your back." Vanessa's cheerful grin really helped me get through these solitary times. Yet sometime after that, a major event transpired that even her assistants couldn't fix. "Sweetheart, I'm expecting." One particular day, I felt something wasn't quite right physically, so I went to the emergency room and excitedly shared the news with Scott. "I'd always wanted to have kids. That's fantastic. I'm going to be a father." As I heard Scott's elated tone over the phone, my home, my spouse, my happiness soared. "I'm going to be a dad." His voice filled my heart with unprecedented delight. Regardless of my anxieties, I still cherished my husband back then. The mere thought of raising a kid with him warmed my soul. Surely, Scott would prioritize our family moving forward. Nonetheless, at this time, my mother-in-law seemed to begrudge my good fortune. I wasn't anticipating much, but when I announced my pregnancy, she simply gave a detached nod. There was zero consideration for my situation. Instead, she started making me shop at remote locations and haul heavy items, placing an increasing weight on me. Then, on a day when my baby bump was quite substantial, it occurred. You're so slow, you're just in the way." My mother-in-law, more annoyed than normal, suddenly shoved me from behind. Consequently, I lost my equilibrium and slammed my abdomen hard into the sharp corner of a table. Ouch. Right then, a pain unlike anything I'd ever felt washed over me. I felt awful, so I called the paramedics myself and went to the hospital, leaving my mother-in-law, who had retreated to her room. The examination results were terrible, something I wished I could ignore. Not only had I lost the baby because of the fall, but I was also now unable to have any more kids. Because of her, I'll never get to hold my baby. How are you going to account for what happened? When I got back home, I confronted my mother-in-law, tears streaming down my face from the shock of it all. If she hadn't done what she did, I might have been able to have my child, and it would have been healthy. It's your fault for being so awkward, isn't it? You are so weak to put the blame on other people. But my mother-in-law didn't even give a sign of being sorry and just kept on yelling at me. What really stunned me was what my husband said once I'd told him everything. "I get that you are sad, but it was an accident, right? There's nothing more that we can do about it." He didn't even attempt to listen to my tearful request. Even though I couldn't dream about having children anymore, why did my husband think he could simply say it was inevitable? Was he not even happy about the baby? Don't even get the idea in your head to do something crazy like divorce. If you leave, I'll bring Vanessa back to manage the household chores. After my husband went back to his room, my mother-in-law added salt to the wound, seemingly to make me even more devastated. Honestly, divorce had come into my thoughts when she said that, but I couldn't subject my beloved sister-in-law to going through these days. When Vanessa found out about the baby she lost, she immediately started yelling at my husband's mother, but even her words didn't provide me any solace. Vanessa's visits slowly became less frequent, as though she had surrendered. I wish Vanessa all the happiness in the world. Feeling hopeless about everything and fearing what tomorrow might bring, I just mindlessly did whatever chores my mother-in-law told me to. It even seemed like there was no use in thinking about anything anymore. However, after 3 years of being alone, something completely unexpected happened that turned everything upside down. Vanessa, who I hadn't seen in quite a while, showed up at the house. To be honest, I'm going to have a baby with the man I love. I'm also planning to get married to him very soon. That's fantastic. I pray the baby is born without any problems. My mother-in-law was absolutely ecstatic about Vanessa's news, which she delivered with a kind of glow. It was such a tragedy with Kristen, so be extra careful. Then, as Scott gave me a happy, innocent smile, I made my excuses to go shopping, getting away from the situation. Although I wanted to be happy for Vanessa and her pregnancy, I just couldn't stand to see his expression, which was completely different than when it was me. But that's when it happened. Kristen. After I heard my name and turned around, I was shocked to see Vanessa had run after me. "What's the matter?" "You need to take care of yourself. Actually, there's something I really have to tell you." Then she came towards me, sharing a story I never saw coming. As I was standing there, completely confused after hearing everything, Vanessa held my hand tightly. "Now it's time for me to lend you a hand." When Vanessa spoke, gazing directly at me, tears that I was sure I'd shed long ago started streaming down my face again. A few months later, I was at my house, waiting with my mother-in-law and my husband for Vanessa to show up. Today was finally the day she had promised to come with her fiancé. "I'm here, I've brought her." Together, Vanessa walked into the house with a tall, well-mannered man. Then immediately, Scott's eyes widened as he looked at the man. "What?" "Mr. Miller." As Scott jumped up, clearly shocked, Vanessa gave him a wide smile. "Shocked, huh? I bet you never imagined my fiancé would be the son of your company's president, did you?" It turned out that the man identified as Mr. Miller worked at the same company as Scott, preparing to take over his father's company. In other words, he was the boss's son. It seemed Mr. Miller fell hard for Vanessa, who was employed as a receptionist at another company, and their relationship had blossomed from there. So, Vanessa is going to be the president's wife in the future, just like I figured for my daughter. Fully grasping the situation, my mother-in-law seemed even more thrilled. Even though he seemed a little confused, Scott was also wearing a happy expression. He was probably thinking that having the head of a top-tier company as family would work out in his favor. Nevertheless, against their expectations, I calmly positioned myself beside Vanessa. But this will be the final time she'll visit this house. My mother-in-law and Scott were staring blankly, completely baffled by everything that was happening. Actually, Vanessa and I had already made a specific choice by then. Seriously, don't be so self-centered. You were just pretending it wasn't an issue, but Vanessa has always been furious about the whole situation. After a moment, I gave my mother-in-law a harsh look, as she'd shouted as if she'd finally woken up. Vanessa then moved forward and started sharing her honest thoughts in a soft tone. I have been trying to get you to see how you treat Kristen, but since you won't change, I'm done. Vanessa, the day she stopped me, she told me of a certain strategy she'd come up with. She had been fretting over me for the last 3 years, devising ways to liberate me from my mother-in-law. The cause for Vanessa's absence from the house was that she'd given up on trying to get my mother-in-law and Scott, who showed no remorse, to alter their behavior. But she was attempting to save me with a new method. The big plan, was to sever all connections with her family, including me, the day she got married. Don't tell me you're still holding a grudge about the baby. Absolutely. My mom's actions toward Kristen are beyond acceptable. I was completely silent alongside Scott, who stood there, stunned after Vanessa's scolding. What in the world was it that I fell in love with before we got married? It's all lies. I didn't do anything wrong. You're being manipulated by this woman. Even though Vanessa, my mother-in-law, had repeatedly criticized me, she just couldn't admit she was wrong, and instead she started pointing the blame at me. So I pulled out my phone, seeing this as the perfect chance to respond. Can you still say that after witnessing that? I asked, showing them the video. Eventually, my mother-in-law was speechless, and her mouth fell open after watching the video I'd played. This was actual proof of the harassment, something I'd been gathering for months ever since I learned about Vanessa's scheme. It was her actions that gave me the strength I needed. I'm now getting a lawyer and divorcing Scott. When I firmly stated this, Vanessa just gave me that same unsettling, unchanging smile. I had essentially given up on any chance of happiness for a very long time, feeling helpless, like nothing would ever improve. But because she reached out, I was finally able to do something to create a better life for myself. Divorce? Absolutely not, she said, completely rejecting the idea. I refuse to let this happen. Also, we're aware of your actions as well. Vanessa immediately cut off Scott as he started to get upset. He seemed completely taken aback and tensed up, like he knew he was guilty. It seemed like that was a cue, because Mr. Miller, who had been silent until that point, began to explain things. He told us they'd done a bit of an investigation at the company. According to Mr. Miller, Scott's self-centered personality was a problem even at work. He'd been harassing employees who didn't agree with him and forced coworkers he disliked to quit, and all of this came to light thanks to Mr. Miller's quick investigation. I heard that Scott's issues had already been brought to his dad, who was the president, and the possibility of Scott being let go was already being discussed. Absolutely not. A divorce combined with losing his job seemed insurmountable. How could I possibly manage without either a career or a family? As the severity of everything sank in, Scott lost color in his face and wailed in distress. My mother-in-law, witnessing his breakdown, began to fret as well. I pleaded with them, please don't both of you say such bizarre things. Also, wouldn't Kristen have no place to go even if she left here? It's already been arranged for Kristen to work at his business. Mom, just let it go, I said. Hearing Vanessa's cold words, both of them fixed their eyes on me. I urged, come on, think it over. We are married, aren't we? If we keep going down this road, it'll be impossible for us to live. Please, Kristen, assist us, they begged. I let out a huge sigh because the two of them were desperately relying on me. Ultimately, they just wanted to take advantage of me up until the final moment. There was no justification for me helping individuals like that. This is all a result of their own actions. I refused, and then I left the house with Vanessa and Mr. Miller. Afterwards, I successfully divorced Scott. Because of the evidence I provided, it was found that I had been treated horribly, and my mother-in-law was instructed to pay a $30,000 settlement. Just like Mr. Miller had predicted, Scott was terminated from the company. Word is my mother-in-law and Scott, who were existing off of money they'd inherited and their retirement funds, have fallen into a difficult financial situation, I've been told. Vanessa, conversely, moved away from her family's house, and she's currently enjoying a happy marriage with Mr. Miller. I, too, am still in contact with her, have reintegrated into normal life, and now I'm leading a life that gives me satisfaction. Moving forward, my desire is to keep living.